Hi, friends. Hosts Eric and Rachel here of Talking with Famous People, and we'd like to discuss typology via Naked and Afraid. May I just generally suggest that if you want to look at typology from multiple angles, yourself and how you react to people, the people on the show and how they interact with each other, as a typological study, Naked and Afraid is about as good as it gets because you've got exactly the elements you want. You've got two people engaging with each other, each revelatory of their functions active of this weird new thing that's pressing on them to be operationally effective and stuff. And then you got your own reactivity to them. I've noticed certain people in the show I don't like and have I see my own TE critical parent coming through all the time, and I'm terrible at TE. But I cannot watch a single episode of this show without saying things like they should have pointed the fish trap the other direction. Like, Eric, you wouldn't last 5 minutes out there, but that's six slot, right? It's like we want to complain about people who are failing on our six slot function. So, Rachel, if you give me an example of a show where you've or some context in which you use FI6 to critique what's going on with your watching.
I'm wondering if like talk shows like Oprah and uh, or Dr. Phil. Is that his
Yeah,
name?
Dr. Phil.
Yeah, like those kind of get reactions out of me. Like, hey, you shouldn't be.
You shouldn't feel this way.
Yeah, yeah.
You shouldn't feel this way. So let's watch a little bit of this thing. And what we have here is an episode of Negative Afraid with an ENTJ dude and an ESFP chick. And let's see how this plays out.
I feel a little tired.
A little bit of physical discomfort is usually just your mind playing a trick on you.
That's your classic SI polar moment, right? He's projecting his ENTJ SI polar onto everybody. He's saying, "No, physical discomfort is just a trick your mind's playing on you." Only if you have no real engagement with SI at all could any of you ever dream that to be the case. For me, physical discomfort is never my mind playing a trick on me. It's always because I'm actually uncomfortable. As probably almost everybody else in the world would agree with that if you were to actually think about it, right? But if you're SI polar, you tend to project this frame of reference, say, onto the world that, hey, everybody, the only reason you're not SI polar is a lack of willpower and or clarity about how easy it is to ignore these things. Let's see what else they got for us.
Don't like mosquitoes.
Whatevs.
It looks like smallpox. Ben doesn't seem to get hit by them as hard, but it's difficult when I feel like he doesn't really care that my body's having a really hard time with it.
This would be reflective of her fifth slot absolute value SI running afoul of his polar SI. They're both absolute values for both of them, but for him, he can't even conceive of other people's discomfort being meaningful in any calculus. And his own discomfort he just sees as weakness he needs to willpower through. Textbook ENTJ thing. But these guys, ESFP and ENTJ, are activity partners in socionic center type. And it turns out that they worked this thing out. He's really rude to her for the beginning part, which is textbook, super unconscious 8th slot FE. He's just like, that doesn't matter. My FE is in perfect balance. I basically excised from my life the need to be polite because of my role in the military, and I'm just running as I'm accustomed to running, not realizing that this circumstance requires some engagement. Because she's not FE either, she's not ever saying things like you're being disrespectful and or fuck you, you need to communicate with me better. She's saying things like, I'm worried about his lack of authentic caring about me, which is is a different frame than FE, but they end up working it out kind of.
Yep.
Makes me feel like he could just very easily brush me off and not care even a little bit. Almost sociopathic to me.
So the key takeaway there is she's not concerned about what I would be concerned about, which is, okay, dude, look, we need to communicate effectively here. And right now, your open disrespect for me and my processes is a barrier to us effectively communicating. Because the first thing you need to know, ENTJ, is that you're a stupid fucking idiot, and I'm not. So remember that when we talk, and maybe you'll lose the attitude. That'd be my approach. But of course, that's not her approach at all. She's worried that his lack of authentic caring about her might impact her negatively. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else we got here.
For a person to truly not experience empathy.
I physically don't experience it. It's not that I don't value other people, contributions, yada, yada, yada. I just don't care. There's a tribalistic perspective would say that empathy is an effective tool to help people deal with their problems. I think empathy is a character flaw.
Social support is...
Empathy is a character flaw. Like, how do you determine that, like, at some point he established that this was a narrative he was gonna go with. It's sort of a telling everybody, like, no Fs, no Fi, no Fe, no. Except that narrative is totally unsustainable. The first thing I would have said was, okay, well, weren't you in the military with this whole don't leave anybody behind thing? Yeah. And did you think to yourself, maybe that invalidates what I'm saying here? It's like I wouldn't let him get away with his bullshit instrumental NI, but she's not concerned about that. She's also got instrumental NI, and what she ultimately ends up worrying about is an authentic connection between the two of them. Mm-hmm.
It's a really important part of what it means to be a human.
What it used to mean.
It makes me feel like my contributions are somehow less. It makes me worried that he undervalues me and doesn't really consider me to be a good partner. Ben was entirely unexcited.
Here, put him down in the water. You can tack him up right now if you want. I'm just gonna nap this storm out.
So I mean, if you're FI tool, you're hoping to you've done something helpful. You're saying, here, I'm showing you that you have worth, that I'm trying to take care of both of us, and he's not responding with an equivalent kind of, yes, this is important to me too, and so she's feeling undervalued, like he doesn't consider her an equal, but she's not so much worried about the perception thing there, or the status, as she is about the lack of emotional connectivity between the two. That's how I interpret it. Yeah. I liked this girl. Did you like her too? Yeah, she was cool. She's a free diver, and she the thing is, the problem he had is basically she kicked ass and he kept failing at shit. And so then he shifted his narrative to, oh, I guess I'm here to learn, which allowed him to be kind of substantially cooler in the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
Not my feathers.
It's fire, that's what's expected, right?
You're actually kind of putting me down, man.
That's unfortunate.
Okay, so in that instance, she was forced to go to her countervalued FE and say, hold on a second, I'm going to critique you now on an FE mistake. You're putting me down. which basically is a form of you're being disrespectful, which is an FE critique rather than an FI. Like at this point, she's saying, okay, we've been struggling to get this fire. You've been struggling to make a fire and failed. I used a magnifying glass in my diving goggles that I had because I had thought to bring bifocal diving goggles, and I was able to start the fire with this magnifying glass. And she's seeing at this point that his expression of emotional disconnect no longer feels authentic to her. It feels like, okay, now you're just being shitty out of pouty reasons or something. And so at that point, she critiques it as an FE thing. Let's see what but the thing is, he responds a little bit to that as well. And I think it's because at that point she's shifted from critiquing his FI, which he doesn't feel which he's basically said, we don't need FI here because the TE problems that we need to solve are right in front of us. So yeah, of course we had fire. We needed to get fire, and we got it, and that wasn't unexpected. No reason to get all excited about it, even though they'd been struggling with it for days. He doesn't think it's necessary to spend much attention on what's important or people's feelings or his own feelings because the TE is so predefined. But when she pushes on his FE, it knocks a little bit of defensiveness loose in him, which causes it unsettled him. He's subject to being critiqued on his 8th slot function and unsettled by it, as he would be on his 6th slot function. So he responds differently, as we see here.
Yeah, there's fire.
I feel all proud of myself. So, is that all you wanted?
That's it. Good job. Well done. I realized that I've been super abrasive towards Sarah. She got the fire first. She got the first lobster. She had to go out and do all these things that she didn't even know she could do. I may not show it, but I'm excited for you. That's a big deal.
Okay, so after she's proved herself useful at what he refers to multiple times in this episode, which I didn't get a club of it, critical problem solving, which is just TE, right? That's what he means by it. Critical problem solving. It's critically important. Critical problem solving, as he understands it, should be called situational problem solving. As emerging problems arise, you need to be able to solve them within the frame of the situation. And of course, he's right that critical problem solving is what's needed for this endeavor here. Of course, as an ENTP, I would have made sure if I was his partner on this thing, by the end of it, he wouldn't have grown at all, but he'd feel really stupid because I would spend my time lambasting his idiocy, and just because ENTJs they're either willing to use me for what I'm good at, which is fine, like get me to type them or something, or their worlds and my worlds never intersect. If they do, and it's not because they're utilizing me for something that I'm genuinely good and better than them at, which they're smart enough. That's one way ENTJs are smart. They're perfectly happy to exploit other people's skills, even if they don't like those people or want to spend any time with them. They're able to recognize, okay, that guy is the best at this, so I'm going to get him to do it. But if we were to encounter each other in a situation like this, I would just not tolerate ENTJs for 5 fucking minutes. I'd make sure first off, right off the bat, they were disillusioned of any notion that they were smart. Because that's the problem with the ENTJs. They think they're smart. Like Jordan Peterson, right? ENTJ. He thinks he's smart. They are not smart. Okay? Just let's make that very clear. They are instead very effective. And that's very different than smart. But they think that because they're very effective, that means they're smart. And that's why I don't like ENTJs. Not all ENTJs. I don't dislike you guys. I just like to seeing it. I like it. I like the way that we interact right now, where you guys sometimes pay me to type you, and respect that I'm the expert on things, and take advantage of my skills in a good, straightforward TENI way to solve the problem that you want to solve, which is to know exactly what you're typing. I love interacting with the ENTJs like that. When I type them, they're easy to type, they're fun to type, they've got good questions, and it's no fuss, no muss, and they're done. But watching them like this, it's revelatory of how you are. Like, my 6-slot critical parent TE doesn't like TE, and yet is constantly critiquing everybody else's TE in the show. And my absolute value NI doesn't like people who are instrumental in their NI, like that guy. But especially because of the SI polar, it might be an absolute value for him, but he's just... As SI fourth, I'm especially SI fragile, and I feel like this frame he's projecting of you should just ignore your body is like insane. I could never do that, right? So that's partially, I guess, why they rubbed me the wrong way. Did this guy rub you the wrong way too?
Mm-hmm.
And what made you dislike him?
The fact that, like, she was having all these accomplishments and he was just like, oh, whatever.
So
like, no big deal.
He wasn't feeling correctly.
Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah.
That's FI6
Right,
for you.
FI6.
I'm not particularly expressive.
Well, thanks. I appreciate any amount of expression you have to share. You didn't.
One nice thing about FI, I think, is it's not keeping score. So she's looking for some kind of authentic engagement with the guy, and views the whole thing as him having barriers for her to create that authentic connection. And once she's broken through those, it doesn't really matter what happened before. For me, as FE third person, I'm like, oh, I'm not done holding you accountable for all that bullshit. Now that you finally admitted, okay, fine, I'm wrong. Or, okay, you win, Eric. That's just the start. Now that I've got you properly positioned, it's time for you to be held accountable for all the bullshit you've said so far. I've been keeping track. She wasn't keeping track. She was looking to get this outcome and sees that struggle as just being part of the process of gaining an authentic connection with people is sometimes a little rocky or something. But until you find a connectivity point, I just don't think of things like that at all. So, but I like watching the ESFPs on this show. I like them on this show consistently. I like the ESFPs. They deal with these situations well, and they deal with them in good spirits, and they're also not insane about harsh realities. If it's like that's gonna be a lot of pain getting from here to there through those thorn bushes, they're not like some ENFJ or ENTJ. You might go, well, pain is just in your mind. Just charge right through them, and that's fine. So I like ESFPs on the show generally, and I don't remember seeing an ENTJ. Somebody who's pretty clearly an ENTJ like this guy on the show before, but here he is.
Really give a shit at all about my thoughts or what I had to say.
I get that all the time. Looks like it's just straight out towards that little island that's like right here.
That's really, really far.
We've come all this way, let's finish strong.
So that's the last little clip I took, but you see, even at the end, he's not even interested in listening to her, like, can my body go this far talk at all. He's just like, oh, you're complaining about your mental weakness again. Let's just go to get it done. Now, by the end, they had become friends, and she had broken through his, no F allowed in life fucking weirdness that he had going on. And like I said, he reframed the whole thing as I needed to learn things. Because, of course, that's what a TE person is going to do in a circumstance like that. They're going to say, okay, so how do I make this useful to me? If instead of being useful to solve these problems, I'm not being useful, then how can I reframe this to still have it be utility? Okay, well, I'm learning to be useful in a comparable situation next time. And that's where the SI absolute value of polar comes in. It is an absolute value for him to learn things, so it's the last place he goes when everything else fails, right? TE for him didn't really work out. He wasn't really that effective at solving any of these problems. His critical problem solving was poor, frankly. Despite him insisting that that was so critical and that, you know, it's basically what he judges everybody on. Well, he did successfully judge her on that because she showed better critical problem solving than him. So what did he do? Instead of re-questioning this whole frame of reference, which he should, if you were sane, not an ENTJ, he goes, oh, fine, this is useful for me now as a learning thing. So anyway, I really think this shows revelatory, not only of to watch it and thinking about other people's cognitive functions you're watching, but to think about and watch yourself react to things. Like the things that make me mad, the things that make me happy, the people I like, the people I don't like, and just how active my absurd quality of TE critique is. I am not at any moment going to be able to answer the question, well, could you do better, Eric? Yes. I can never answer that question with a yes. The truth is, if I were out there and trying to fire for that bow drill, I would tap out in fucking an hour. I'd just be like, okay, this is too hard. I hate this. I got blisters on my fingers. I got my feet are all dusty. I'm naked. I'm getting ants on me. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just, I wouldn't last at all. But I cannot stop critiquing everybody else's TE when they make things. Oh, they should have built that further away from the river. It's gonna go up. Oh, they should have layered their palm fronds so that the water goes out like this. They should have turned the fish trap the other direction. They should have. I'm always TE critiquing. So that's something that's interesting. And one other interesting thing to note is Rachel and I both like this show. Mm-hmm. And what this show consistently is about are the functions that are not predominant in us. Yep. Occasionally you'll see NI play a significant role, but mostly what you're watching here is SI, SE, TE, and FI playing out. Mm-hmm. And so it makes me wonder, like, is that a general thing that people like to watch on TV? The attentional manners that aren't their conscious ones? Or is it just incidental to this show? We like this show and it just so happens this show promotes or necessarily engages those kind of functions because of what it is. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they're not ours is incidental to the equation. I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but I do think it's worth observing, and maybe somebody else who's watched Naked and Afraid or some kind of equivalent shows might chime in the comments about whether they too feel like they like watching shows where the people in them are using intentional manners that aren't their own conscious ones. If you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to read about that particular question in the comments. And I don't say this in most videos. I don't solicit comments and lie and say, I really am interested in hearing what you have to say about this, because usually I don't give a fuck what you have to say about it. But I am very curious about this question about what you watch on TV and whether you think it is, you like stuff that's not your own attentional manners as a TV show.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for a video. It's a little choppy, a little bit of not efficiently made, but hopefully it's good enough. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.